All right. It is Wednesday, and it is the Wayne Coito show, and we are about to go live on Facebook. So if you are connected to us on Facebook, please do like us at Hawaii Sports Fans on Facebook, because you can join in on the conversation and ask questions of all our wonderful guests. And today we have a great guest. And he's going to be a fun guy to ask questions of, especially if you're a fan of the Rainbow Warriors. And we are super excited, of course, because that's been a huge accomplishment for our state, for our university, and our team always remembers to talk about that, which is a great part of our boys, is they always remember their fans and their state and where they come from. But, we're still remembering our cult as well. And next week will be just about a year this weekend since my interview with Cole Brennan. And thank you for everyone who has gone back and watched the show again. And thank you for all the new viewers. I received a really great email from Reagan Mauia, who was a fullback on that team. And it's funny because my Reagan Mauia references on the show are usually Reagan Mauia fumbling, which I remember from the Alabama game when I was in Alabama. And it's just the one memory. I don't know why. It's not like it caused, like he caused the game or something. But I remember it was disappointing because I really wanted to be Alabama, and being there was just a cool experience anyways. But, Colt led us to some high moments, and we'll always remember what he did for our program. And next week we'll remember him again. And thank you for all that have reached out, have watched the show on YouTube again. I'm just been excited at the response. But I want to celebrate something else that we've had happen in recent Hawaii sports history, and this is a big one, and for a lot of us as fans, and that's what I am first. Wayne Coito, like I always say, I'm the fan first, and I was just so stoked because, oh, my Hello Kitty. Some of you see my Hello Kitty, but this is LAFC Hello Kitty. It was a giveaway, and this is why it's smart to have good giveaways, because Hello Kitty giveaway is really brilliant. But also a giveaway at a volleyball game would be to give people a piece of the court, but that's just not usually something that happens. But people like me are going to get my hands on this court, and I got to get it signed by Rado. But anyways, I'm talking about myself so much because I'm as a fan I indulge in this, and like I have a little streamer as well. But a guy I always look forward to seeing at every UH men's volleyball game, because he's super knowledgeable about volleyball for one thing, and he's really amazing at his job. And I'm really excited that he was able to cover. Not only because of his ties to, what makes us really different as Hawaii is being a local team and a team that has local people, but he's a local boy himself. So he brings that, that essence and that perspective to the job, which is really important and which is really cool. And which in his call when he said Hawaii is no ko'oi in 2021, it's such a good call. I get chicken skin thinking about that because it's true. We are the best, and it's cool to hear him say it like that. But I just want to welcome the one and only Tiff Wells to the Wayne Coito Show. Aloha, Tiff.
Aloha, Wayne. Thanks for having me. How we doing?
I'm doing good, thank you, and thank you for your patience. I know we go through a lot of technical issues, and you have so many jobs where you have to deal with microphones and craziness, and I'm one of those guys too. I'm always like every week I find a new something gone wrong with my software. So thank you for your patience, but also thank you for being here, because I know it's been a crazy several months for you, just the excitement, but also the anxiety and the just COVID and the pandemic and how that has changed everything. But nonetheless, Hawaii men's volleyball wins it all. And how do you describe, just from your perspective, all of this hubbub that happened in Ohio?
Where do you go? Where do you start? You go from the high of beating BYU March 6, 2020, to the following week, the team's on the road, seeing their season canceled or seeing their season postponed, then later canceled. Seniors thinking their careers are done. Big West Conference, NCAA gives a blanket waiver to all those spring sport athletes. They get an extra year.
Mm-hmm.
Does the Big West even have a season?
Yeah.
Because you saw like the EIVA, the MIVA, MPSF all came out with their schedules. sometime throughout January of 2021. The Big West never made an announcement until the last week of January. A
Sure.
shortened season, it's conference only,
Mm-hmm.
and you get what you get, and it's a shortened conference season, and only conference matches against conference opponents. You had some non-conference. You had
Mm-hmm.
against, say, the likes of Santa Barbara and San Diego for the most part, and
Mm-hmm.
Irvine as well.
Mm-hmm.
Undefeated season, you lose in the conference tournament semifinals at home to a number 4 CDC San Diego. Maybe that loss was the best thing for this team this year, and it
Yeah.
gave them a chance to, not have the undefeated season alive. And it was something that, they wanted to have. The fans really wanted to have that undefeated season. But sometimes when you do have that loss, it puts things into a bit of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Given a second chance with that large bid, to go to the NC2A tournament, you were there at the Covelli Center,
Yep.
played very well against Santa Barbara, and played very well against BYU. And we'll get to see a banner raising coming in the next few months, which should be very, very cool.
Yeah, that'll be really cool to see that. And I think, it is one of those things that will be talked about for such a long time. And in the moment, sometimes it's hard. And, for me, if you saw the video that I took, I was taking video and I was also providing video. You probably saw a lot of my Hawaii Sports Fans video on KITV. But at the same time, like Cody Krupp, when aloha to Cody as well, who's leaving KITV and going to Wisconsin, I was like, dude, I in the third set, like, especially match point, like, I'm going to be like too emotionally like tense to be able to take any kind of video. So like I literally put my phone like by my feet and like ended up knocking it over, but I at least got like a little bit of celebration. But it's so euphoric and it's so amazing. But for you, who has to do a job as well, I know you want to see this team win, you're a fan of this team obviously, but you have to do a job as well, and that that's not always easy sometimes when you feel that. But great command, and you can be commended as well. You're extremely professional, but you also let that come through your excitement. And just talk about that moment. And was there any preparation that went into it, or what? How did you go into it? Did you not want to bocce it all as well? Because you're like, if I think about us winning, then I'm like, I could bocce it all. But I don't know what. How did you prepare for it all?
That's funny because I was also asked by ESPN Honolulu's Gary Dickman last week when I was in studio. He had asked me if that final call, if it was scripted or if it
Mm-hmm.
just came
Okay.
off the cuff. And like you asked, it wasn't any sort of bocce.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there is a job to do, but
Of
also
course.
to realize that not a lot of people have ESPNU.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Exactly.
they're relying on us with ESPN Honolulu to be that live uh,
Mm-hmm.
picture painting,
Mm-hmm.
and to have that final call. Had an idea of what we wanted to say going into even Friday, the day before, as we're preparing for the match. And
Mm-hmm.
you felt comfortable after how set one went.
Yeah.
Set two, pretty comfortable win for Hawaii, and you thought maybe this had a chance. And just seeing how set three went for Hawaii, there were a couple of ties, couple of lead changes, especially in the second set. But that third set, it was all Hawaii.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
you get to the halfway point at 15. You're like, okay, this is gonna happen. And you can start to feel the excitement. You don't want to shout into the crowd into your microphone as much, because you
Mm-hmm.
have you have many people that are listening and trying to
Yeah.
follow along, and they can feel the excitement. They can hear the fans. Thank goodness there were fans
Mm-hmm.
for those two
I
matches
agree.
that Hawaii
Yeah.
had in Ohio. Just with everything going on, no fans for Hawaii's matches all season long.
Yeah.
But to just have that live perspective, the last few points, kind of just thinking along the lines of what head coach Charlie Wade had said, all throughout his 12 years of just, it's been a process. It's been thinking of guys, throughout the program that have gotten this men's volleyball team, this program to where it is now. And he's, very appreciative of this
Mm-hmm.
2021 group, but he will always remember individuals throughout those 12 years of his coaching career here at UH that helped this program get to where it's at.
Yeah. Well, yeah. This program and this team, there are so many great storylines. Obviously, just talented. But seeing a guy like Rado, we'll just talk about him. I just saw Milan post about how he signed with his old team, I guess, Milan's team in Bulgaria,
Hmm.
which is pretty cool. And what got me thinking about just like how amazing that pipeline is, and just like the relationship between like I'm always looking at how Polynesians, Asians, how we're always related to each other and how our language and culturally we are. But there's not that much like Eastern European connection. There's like HPU men's tennis and women's tennis. Like I can figure out where like all of it is, but it's so cool at the same time because that's always been actually been a part of us for a long time. That connection and culturally, just the family, the Ohana spirit is clearly a part of their culture and Milan and obviously. Coach just making sure that feeling of that team. But just talk about how that team, that ohana, that chemistry, is really what ultimately probably helped them do something that is really difficult. People don't understand how hard it was.
It's you go back to last year after the season got canceled, and then having to realize for these seniors that they're going to be given an extra chance. And luckily for all the sports, within the spring sports season, that this extra year was not going to count towards the 4.5 scholarships for men's volleyball. And so with the program, with the boosters, with the supporters of this program, it took a lot. It took a lot of effort, took a lot of money from the community to help raise the money needed for the likes of Patrick Gaspin, Colton Cowell, Rada Padapunov, James Anastasiadis, and Jackson Van Ekeren, all to come back for this extra season. And Rada Padapunov put it bluntly when he was asked about it. He says, we have to repay the debt given to us from this community. We have a debt to repay. And the only way to do that, he realized, was a team national championship. He's always been one to say, individual accolades are nice, but they're not the end game. And it's a team sport. And once he bought in, once Colton Cowell, once Patrick Gaspin, they bought in this team. You saw the hashtag once the season began, which was unfinished business. And they felt, along with BYU, that 2020, it was going to be a collision course meeting at George Mason between Hawaii and BYU, who would have been the national champion in 2020. And to come into 2021, they had a look on their faces all season long. And it took a very great effort from UC San Diego to beat Hawaii at home in the conference tournament. But you were there, you saw the matches against Santa Barbara and against BYU, and they just had a look in their eye like, this is ours. No one's taking it from us, and we're going to take it to our opponents from the opening serve. And there was just a look in the eyes of a Gaspin, a Padapunov, and a Cowell. And it took the leaders, it took the seniors to help reel in this group and to help them understand that we are the one seed. We're playing for more than just ourselves. We're playing for an entire state. And with those fans in the crowd, it made a huge difference.
And we appreciate, as a fan, I just being there, and I was lucky I got to cover that one game, and I saw you in Northridge, and being media there, obviously I wasn't there to cheer or anything, and it was kind of a humdrum game, but I got to see the team up close, and honestly the team looked kind of bored. Like it's hard sometimes to stay dominant. That's a hard thing, and people don't realize you got to get yourself up for it, but you can't get too high for it. But you got to be focused. And like you said, the UCSD game was probably a wake-up call. One thing about Rado, and I'm just so impressed with him and just the way he answers questions. First of all, English when it's not your first language is really difficult to like be able to just have provide great answers and commentary. But one thing I loved about him too was after the ESPN broadcast, he talked about. Or during it, because the game was so fast that they had time to show the trophy presentation, which is not normal, but Hawaii won so quickly that they were like, we can show the trophies, we can interview the players, and like the announcers were like, oh Rado, you hit this poorly or something, and he was just like I'm holding a championship trophy, like he was like, no, this is not the narrative, we won this, and this is not about how I played or how anything. And that was so amazing because I was getting upset. I was like, whoa. We just won the national championship. We're not talking about who hit blah, 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 blah. This is, what it is. But just talking about just the maturity, I think, too, of the seniors and all of them, not just in the game, but throughout the season and how they had to steer the ship.
Well, I mean, you talked about Rado and the fact that he realized he was going to be the guy this coming season, and that goes back to the first part of 2020 before the
Mm-hmm.
season ultimately got canceled, and he realized that he has basically said that his position, the opposite, is you're the garbage guy. You're not always going to get the best of sets, but you're expected to be the point scorer, and he was. He double-digit kills in every single match this season. You saw the service run he had against BYU in the national championship.
Mm-hmm.
His leadership, both on and off the floor, along with Patrick Gaspin and Colton Cowell, they've been Rainbow Warriors for five, and for in some cases for Cowell and Gaspin, they've been at since the 2015-2016 academic year. And so for
Wow.
those guys to have been around for
Yeah.
this long, and for Colton to be a Maui boy,
Yeah.
he was born in Manhattan Beach, but
Mm-hmm.
he does list Makawao as his
Of
hometown, and
course.
he's always said, and he's always put on the pride of Maui
Yeah.
built. There's so
Mm-hmm.
many hashtags, so many nicknames he has that has been given to him. Just another in the long line of Hawaii grown products that go and be stars
Yeah.
for the men's volleyball team here at UH. Just to see the leadership, we can't forget guys like a James
Mm-hmm.
Anastasiadis, who did
Mm-hmm.
graduate but came back, was a grad
Yeah.
manager,
Yeah.
wasn't with the team on the floor all season long, but was with them on the floor for the semis and the final at Ohio State. He was clutch. And we can't forget Jackson Van Eckeren, a guy that if he
Yeah.
wanted to, could have transferred, could have left, could have started at almost every single Division One or Division Two school out there on the men's side. Chose to be a team guy, chose to be at UH, and he was one of those glue guys on the bench that really helped the starters get better in practice day in and day out.
One moment that it was kind of my favorite of the entire tournament, and I just kind of let out, and I was next to you for that, and I was on the platform, and I don't know if you saw me, I got scolded. Was during Rado's like 4 ace, or was it 5 in a row ace thing? I mean, I thought that was the nail in the dagger. I thought that's when we won the national championship, because it was over. Like BYU, and it's intimidating. They brought a lot of people too, and they were loud too, and they can BYU people do not they're like Utah Jazz. They are Utah Jazz fans. They're like the people that like are annoying sometimes too, but also are into it and are knowledgeable about volleyball just as much, because Mormons, I mean, that's how I grew up as well. We're knowledgeable about volleyball. So it's like you said, it was the perfect two teams to play each other, but also at any moment BYU could have came back. I mean, they have the Gabby on their team. I mean, the guy is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like that could have been the most crippling moment, and I felt a shift in the gym. But when you look back on just specifically that run and that Rado, what do you remember? And even your calls, what do you remember about that?
What do you remember about Rado? It's a guy, and you go along with all the other servers at UH on that team in that match, and they weren't necessarily serving at people.
Mm-hmm.
They were more so serving in between
Mm-hmm.
the serve receivers. And I think for UH, they knew they had to be not just serving with miles per hour behind their serve,
Mm-hmm.
but it was more so trying to be smart with their serves. They weren't
Mm-hmm.
just going back to grip and rip. It was more
Yeah.
so of placing their serves and getting BYU out of system. A lot of people felt that BYU wasn't the greatest of teams in terms of serve receive, and you hear every coach say, well, if you can win the serve and pass game, you'll be in the match. And
Mm-hmm.
you just felt that Hawaii's serve receive game, and a lot of credit goes to the likes of Colton Cowell, Chaz Galloway,
Mm-hmm.
and Gage Worsley. They played very well on serve receive. They only gave up 2 aces in that match against BYU. They only had one reception error against Santa Barbara. They made 2 very good teams look quite average.
Yeah.
Santa
Yeah.
Barbara was top 4 all
Mm-hmm.
season long. BYU was 1 and 2 all season long as well. And UH made 2 very good teams
Mm-hmm.
look quite average. Like you said, you go to the BYU match, you had the Cougars out of system more often than not. And sometimes you feel, some sympathy for the opponent, especially when their setter, Will Stanley, Punahou grad, you feel bad for him. He's running all over the court basically the entire match.
Mm-hmm.
And Hawaii just took it to BYU from the service line. And that was from the opening point. And it basically culminated with Rado's 3 straight aces in that third set. And you just felt that, even before that, that Hawaii had a legitimate chance from the beginning. And like you said, that those three aces put together, and of course Jakob Teller's run as well. Those two really put
Yes.
nails in the coffin to lead Hawaii to that title.
Jakob Tella, I mean, he's probably one of my favorite players as well. I know Jenny's watching, so hello to Jenny. She was there in the gym, and that's one of her favorite players too. And one thing I like about him is like, first of all, he had one of the best plays I think of the tournament when he like, I mean, when he swings at the net, when he doesn't even show, or even when he shows, doesn't even like show that he's gonna try and get the guys to bite on a set. Like, he's swinging, and he swings from crazy angles. And he had one amazing swing, and like I think it was the third set where he didn't even. It looked like he was gonna set the one, and he was like, I'm not. I'm gonna swing, and I'm gonna just let them know. And he doesn't even. He goes up and he just turns, and you're like, oh my gosh, like he's above the net and ripping it straight down. But he is just so fun to watch. But talk about just his leadership, especially from that position, like the setter spot, which is another coveted spot on our team, obviously.
He had some big shoes to fill, and he was on that 2019 team. He was a true freshman, and behind Joe Worsley, the two-time All-American, three-time All-American, two-time first-teamer. And he was able to learn from Joe day in and day out in practice. And you more so saw Jakob in that Big West Championship match in 2019 here at home against Long Beach State. And he came in, had a couple of very good serves late in the match, and you just felt that if he was given a chance moving on in his career, that he could be the guy. He split time last year in 2020 with Brett Sheward, basically took over the starting job here in 21, and he knew he had dudes. Yeah. Every coach tells us if you want to win a match, if you want to win a big match or the match, you got to have dudes. And Hawaii had three of them between Gassman, Panapunov, and Cowell. And we can't forget what Chaz Galloway did in the BYU match: 6 kills, 9 errorless swings. Same for Guilherme Voss. Those two guys stepped up quite huge. For what Jakob Tella did, that was a masterful performance. Hawaii hit over 380 in that match, hit 381, one of the best offensive performances from start to finish. Wow. And a lot of credit goes to the passers on receive that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But Jakob Tella set a phenomenal match.
Well, that's amazing. Hitting 380. It's like if a team wins the World Series hitting 380, it's like people would be like, what? Like, it's insane. But also, Jakob Telle, these guys, Rado, they're on the team on the Long Beach in that gym at the Pyramid when I was there as well. I was wearing this jersey, so I'm reclaiming this jersey right now. Maybe I shouldn't have worn a basketball jersey to volleyball, but, I had to witness a national championship defeat in this jersey. But it was nice to get that back in Ohio. But talk about was there anything lingering, you think, from Long Beach that also helped to just push these guys even further especially when it got down to the postseason?
I just think for the seniors, they knew that this was their last shot. And sure, did they want to be, national champs with a perfect record? Of course. Yeah. But like we talked about earlier, and having that unfortunate loss in the conference tournament semifinals, that has a lot of people have felt that was almost a wake-up call. And it was almost good that they got that loss out of their system. And I think just when you're given that second chance with the at-large bid, you were still the number 1 seed based off of your resume. It allowed the seniors to have about a week and a half, 2 weeks before that next match against Santa Barbara to realize, if we have that type of match in the NCAA tournament, it's not going to fly. It's not going to go well. And for these seniors to realize that we have one final opportunity, they had to take it, and they did, and they took it to Santa Barbara. They took it to BYU, and how fitting was it for Patrick Gassman at the final point of the 2020 season against BYU with the walk-off ace, has the final point, not just of his career, but of the 2021 season with the kill through the middle against BYU.
Yeah. I love it. I always, especially because we're passing nails, it's like, just go middle all day if we can, because it's just a beautiful thing to, Voss or just to give Jakob some options. I mean, I'll it's obviously wherever Rado is in the universe, you can set him and he'll probably have a good swing at it. But it's nice to be able to work those guys in the front, and especially our middles. And I thought, they executed so well, and that was ultimately, I think the difference was just execution and perfection. And I've never seen a UH team of any standard really play that way. I mean, other than, our Sugar Bowl team, like who, and we saw what could happen, but they, I don't think they would have won the national championship. And that's a way different thing winning national championship, obviously, football and volleyball, but still just the level of execution where it's just like, wow, our team is so good. Like you watch them, you're like, wow, we're good. Like, and that's kind of fun. This is not, you don't see it all the time, but I think now a lot of the question is looking forward, and I had the rare opportunity actually after the Long Beach loss in the national championship to talk to Coach Wade and share even a drink with him, a few of us, and just very briefly. And I was struck by just his commitment to like the long termness. Obviously, you're gonna be sad. You just lost the national championship game. Guys are graduating, but Coach Wade was definitely excited about some of the guys he was bringing in and just what he was building, and it's like he knew that something like this was coming. But now that this has been accomplished, mission accomplished, it's like what is next for Coach Wade's staff, and where is the direction of the program going, and what are some players that we might be excited about. We see a lot of local faces, which is pretty cool too, to see a lot of local boys that are a part of this program. But just talk about the future of Hawaii men's volleyball.
Where's the future? I mean, outside of being able to see that banner raise, see the trophy in the Simplified Arena, the Stan Sheriff Center, those will be two cool moments. When you look at the 2022 season, you look at who you have to replace. It's going to be tough. You lose one of the more dominant middles the country has seen the last couple of years with Pat Gassman. You lost the National AVCA Player of the Year, your opposite for the last 2 years in Rado Patapunov. You lost your outside one, Colton Cowell. You graduated a libero who did get his degree last week, and Gage Worsley.
Awesome.
All were All-Americans.
Yeah.
You lost 4 starters, 4 All-Americans. You lose a bench guy in Jackson Van Eckeren. It could be tough. Do I see them being the number 1 team in the country? We'll have to wait and see. Mm-hmm. It's a program that head coach Charlie Wade has always said, we don't rebuild, we reload. And they do have a couple guys coming in that are going to be true freshmen. You have a whole bunch of returnees because it's a unique circumstance that not only for UH but all these other schools have, where you came into 2021 and you could have a third-year freshman, which could be the redshirt season plus the COVID year plus he being a third-year redshirt freshman. It's unheard of, and you have guys that are going to eventually graduate with multiple degrees. Some may get a PhD, some may get masters, some may get grad certificates just to be in school for 5, 6, maybe 7 years. So it's just a situation. It's unique. You have a lot of guys returning. You have at least 3 signed for the 2022 campaign. We'll see what happens with the schedule. Mm-hmm. Could we get outside of the Big West Conference? Do we see the return of the Outrigger Invitational? Do we see Hawaii traveling for non-conference matches? It's just all these unique circumstances that we just have to, as we've done for the last 14 months, of wait and see.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be interesting, like you said, about just how the clocks have been messed with people's NCAA eligibility. But honestly, the NCAA has even more issues when it comes to amateurism and everything else that is probably going to be good changes in the long run. But some stuff that the pandemic, or conversations that the pandemic probably caused in a lot of ways, just because we have the time. But I love that mentality of Coach Wade talking about reloading. That reminds me of like Al Skates at UCLA, and I talked with Jason Olive about this on the show, and that was a thing, kind of in our time as well. It was like UCLA was just taking guys to put on their C or D court so they couldn't play on like other teams. Like they were like that loaded. But I know that there are guys in the pipeline as well, and Coach Wade is trying to do a mix of raising guys locally and bringing guys in. But what do you think ultimately is Coach Wade's? Where does he go from here? And a guy that started off as Coach Dave Shoji's assistant and at UH and is now from the Wednesday and one. I mean, like, what a great story for him. But where do we go from here, even with Coach Wade?
Well, I know he is going to Europe either next week or the week after. He is looking at a couple of international recruits to bring in. That's always been one of the success stories for this program is his ability, along with assistant coach Josh Walker and associate head coach Milan Zarkovic, to go the international pipeline. And you could go through rosters of the last decade, 15 years of international guys that have been successful. And you look at 2002, of course, Costas Stelharides, and you look at ALZ Met. Now you look at 21 with Radopata Punov, and also Spiros Hakas, Guilherme Voss. It's been one of the few programs that has been successful going the international round, and the same case could be said for BYU. And when you look at these recruiting rankings, from Volleyball magazine, sometimes fans look at it, why isn't Hawaii in the top 5 or in the top 10? And it's sometimes you're not able to get the top domestic guys, but you're able to bring in good quality guys. International guys don't count towards your recruiting ranking when for Volleyball magazine when they look at it, but you're able to get good quality guys and ultimately great team guys that help to sustain and achieve an ultimate goal, and that's to be successful as a team.
And that's something that's, I think even relevant on the women's side as well. I mean, and it might have a lot to do with the fact that we have to be more creative with our budgets. And I think Coach Schwade is funded pretty decently in terms of his program. Or how is it? Do you know what the actual numbers are in comparison to other programs? Or because it seems like we're committed and we get fans in the seats. I mean, it's one of the few teams that you can be like, hey, this works. Like this model of fans come and we get revenue, and that obviously is not something for every sport. But what is that like for the university as well, just to have a solid men's volleyball program?
It's great. It's one of the few programs, and when we say few, we're going to go with 2. Hawaii and BYU are the only 2 programs that really make money. And for Hawaii that you've seen the last few years, they've led the country in attendance. I mean, outside of 2020, 2021 that is, but you look back at 2019, 18, they've led the country over 5,200 fans per match. So you're able to make the money. You saw what Hawaii was able to do in the Big West Conference tournament as they were the host in 2019. And if you were able to go to those matches, the quarterfinal ones when Hawaii was not in there, you had San Diego, Irvine, CSUN, and Santa Barbara. Mm-hmm. You were able to still get 2,500 fans for 2 quarterfinal matches on a Thursday in Hawaii when UH was not playing. And you may have had a couple of local ties here and there on rosters and whatnot. But all the teams after the tournament were able to go home with some money because of how well the conference tournament was run and how well it was supported. And you saw that UH Long Beach match, it was sold out. Mm-hmm. The senior night match a few weeks prior against Santa Barbara, that was sold out. So just to see, everybody loves a winner.
Of course.
But the success that this program has had, not only here at home, but just in general the last few years, it's been the hot ticket in town. Everybody wants to be at a men's volleyball match. And for those that are lucky enough to get tickets, whether it's season tickets, individual tickets, or however they get their tickets to come to a match, they're treated to some high level volleyball, because as we've seen in this Big West Conference, it's been the top conference since 2018 when the Big West first officially sponsored men's volleyball, because the national champion has come from the BWC, Hawaii in 21 and Long Beach in 19 and 18.
Now, Irvine had won it recently before, but that was before like MPSF or something. So I mean, the volleyball has come, and obviously the sport, and we can talk about that all day as well. But I mean, when you look at that revenue thing, that's actually a very interesting thing, and that was because of the fact that we often hear the narrative so often, especially with Hawaii athletics, is like the conferences are always like, and I'm associated with the Pac West Conference as well, and I have been for 14 years at D2, and just hearing that from the Chaminade and the people who feel like, oh, we have to go all the way there to play Hilo, and we have to play HPU. So and you hear the same thing at D1 with UH. You hear like, oh wow, but if you have the Big West Conference, there's a good argument that the tournament should never move. Literally from Hawaii, the Big West Conference tournament should be in Hawaii every year, because like you said, no matter who, they'll make money. And in Ohio, let's be honest, we had to tell people over and over again that there's a volleyball tournament. They're like, what? Really? Oh, interesting. Is Ohio, like, it's at Ohio State. Ohio State's not in it. They're like, oh. Ohio State is volleyball. Some people are like, it's like we take for granted just how important, what kind of pedestal we put volleyball on compared to like Ohio State, where we just came from, where we had to explain to everybody in Columbus we were there for volleyball. Well, you didn't get to leave the hotel that much out of your bubble, but no, and I think that's kind of something that is really cool and about our culture, or just our local culture. It just has support for volleyball. But as you see the game, I know you like that. You hashtag grow the game because that's been something. And I mean, if you played volleyball, and anybody who's played competitive volleyball, you've known that it's always kind of been a fringe sport. It's always been the thing that, even at Stanford, even though Stanford reversed course, which was, if we're going to even talk about that, Stanford had no business even cutting sports. They have such a ridiculous endowment. Like, they don't ever need to count. They could add like sports, like they could add Quidditch and they'd be fine. They could keep adding crazy stuff. But no, I mean, I think that's important, is like, just like just how the game is sometimes that one that's like we could cut it, I guess, if Title IX or something. But how do you think volleyball sustains itself on that national level and a global level? I feel like it's still growing. I'm not as attuned to the volleyball world as a global, but just nationally, I mean, D3 is huge now, and D1 and 2 is growing. But how do you grow the game in other ways, like in popularity or in media, or do you see even do you think that it's not growing, or do you feel like there's an urgency to maybe get it even bigger or recruit even more guys into the sport and girls into the sport?
I think for the men, it's a little bit tough just because you have so few D1, D2 programs, and to have 42 programs, D1 and D2, just, they have to combine it. Yeah. That's a small issue.
Yeah.
I think if you're able to find a way to get a Power 5 conference to maybe sponsor and sanction men's volleyball, and you grow it that way, that could be a start. And for what we've seen in the NC2A tournament, to go from what was 4 teams, then to 6, then to 7, the next progression would be 8, like what Division 3 has, like you mentioned earlier, that you're able to get a true 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, and so forth. And everybody has to play 3 matches to ultimately win the national title. To see what women's volleyball has had, and to see the platform that they are able to showcase, not just their Final Four, not just the regional final, but also the regional semifinals. You're able to have your Sweet 16 all on various ESPN platforms. That's a key. You may see a couple of the first round, a couple of the second round matches on a variety of networks out there, and that's great. You look at the men's volleyball tournament, take for instance what we just had 2 weeks ago in Ohio. You had 6 total matches. Only one of the 6 was on an ESPN platform, and it was on ESPNU.
Yeah.
Not everybody gets ESPNU.
No,
you had 2 matches streamed on NCAA.com. Heaven forbid Hawaii was not a top 2 seed, and they had to play, and they did have to play their semifinal match on an NCAA.com stream.
Yeah.
Thankfully, Hawaii fans did not, crash down the server, because there were a lot of IP addresses from the island streamed in.
Definitely.
And thank goodness for Ohio State and for their connections with being in the Big Ten to have BTN Plus, and to have those opening round matches that were on Monday and Tuesday, to have those provided, not just with video, but also commentary.
Yeah.
It's a joke, and it's almost a travesty with this sport to have one match and it be your championship match to be on a major platform. And so I think, to go back to your original question, which was how do you make the game popular? How do you continue to grow the game? That's the hashtag that this sport wants to use. You have to start with having more of your matches, not just your championship matches, but some of your regular season matches on a variety of platforms. And if you find a way to have your conference tournaments on, say, with the EIVA, with their connections with the Big Ten, with Ohio State and Penn State, you're able to put those on the Big Ten network. You can throw some of the MPSF matches maybe on a Pac-12 network with your connections with UCLA and SC and Stanford.
Yeah. Yeah.
Continue to
True.
be
Yeah.
innovative because
Yeah.
you're trying to, at the end of the day, grow the sport. And the only way to do that is to put it on major television.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there's an appetite for it all across the country, right? I mean, it's like men's volleyball has pockets everywhere. I mean, Northeast, Midwest. I mean, there's a lot of places that play the volleyball, and and I think in Hawaii it's even more like utilitarian, like us, like we played at recess. It's something like people in Hawaii, like everybody has to at least be involved in it somehow. So like there's a volleyball culture here. But at the same time, like obviously, like it's hard to get volleyball out of that, or men's volleyball, specifically men's, because we're not even talking about women's, where it's definitely much more mainstream, especially NCAA. Um, but now that the NCAA championship is with UH, how does UH, do you think, how does this change our outlook? Does this change Charlie's philosophy? Do you think this, and just the recognition, even though it's different, because like in 1995 we could watch everything on like ESPN2, and on ESPN it's like with those crazy ESPN2 graphics, even I still remember, and Chris Marlowe and everything, which you kind of miss him because he had a great call when we won the national championship in 22, and for at least television, which I'm still, they should just let you do the caller at that point, but it's like, can UH at least leverage, I think, more in growing this game, but also maybe be a leader in terms of how this game is growing as well?
I think they have been, and this is going back to the 2018 season when they went to Nashville, part of the Grow the Game Challenge. In 2019, they went to the East Coast, took on teams like Queens and whatnot, and you sometimes hear some of the chatter of, oh, why are we playing these Conference Carolina teams, and why are we bringing them out, or why are we going to their place and playing them? It's so for them. And when we've talked with those coaches from King University,
Lincoln,
and also from Queens University in Charlotte, they're saying that is some of the greatest volleyball atmospheres they've had, to bring in a top-notch program into their facility. And when Hawaii went to take on Lincoln Memorial a couple of years ago, they moved that match from their men's volleyball specific arena into the basketball, or from the men's volleyball or gym into the basketball arena.
Wow.
And for that, expansion of just that program at LMU to go into their basketball facility, that was huge for them. Yes, Hawaii won in a dominant sweep, but it was able to showcase their brand of volleyball to parts of the country that may or may not be able to have the chance to see a UH. So I think for UH, they've been able to showcase their sport, and they've been able to do a lot of good things the last few years to help grow the game. And there's been other teams, specifically within the Big West, of like a Long Beach and an Irvine, where they go to different places in the country and play these non-conference matches, and to help, not so much to try and help their RPI or strength of schedule, but it's also to promote the game and try to help these newly established programs get themselves on the map.
And just better some of those programs. I mean, people don't realize that even within D1, D2, there are some crazy schools like Sacred Heart, who I used to play, St. Francis, all these guys. Springfield, seeing them come to UH, I thought that was really cool when that happened. Just because that is, people don't, if they understand, there's a lot of history of volleyball there at that school as well, but people don't know because it was a small school in Western Massachusetts. But I played in that gym, and it's crazy. I mean, because there was even national, NCAA Division I championships there. So I think that I agree. I mean, I think taking the show on the road almost, and I think about playing at Juniata, which is an Amish country town right outside of Penn State, and also playing at Penn State. But the Juniata was also like, that was a crazy experience, because like that whole town went to the game because they're like, oh, there's a men's volleyball game, and that's something. And I think that people, they're not exposed to it as much, and that's the thing too. In the U.S., it's like if it seems like if the game at the youth level, because I know in some states they have a hard time promoting it as a interscholastic sport. Do you think that is also something? And I don't know what the landscape looks like nationally, but what kind of access is really given to boys, in terms of like K through 12.
There's not. I mean, there's some. It's not on the same level as what girls volleyball has, and I think for what the girls sport has, I think it's great. It's continuing to grow, and I think for the boys side, it's outside of Hawaii, California, Texas, you look at all the East Coast and the Midwest schools or Midwest states. That is, it's it can be a little bit tough for boys that are wanting to get into the sport if they're in an area where volleyball isn't, I wouldn't say a priority, but it's just not available.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you go to the boys junior Olympics, and you see a lot of these teams from the sports from the states we just talked about, with Hawaii and California, and a majority of the East Coast states, but it's sometimes just not available. It's not accessible to these kids. So I think for them, it's, if they are interested, it's just trying to find a club team, or if it's just a place where it's further away from home. If you really want to play the sport, they're gonna have to be a lot of sacrifices.
Yeah. And you hear it in Kane, like club, how much club costs, travel costs are. It's crazy. We have some comments. One says, Grant says, I'm happy for them, but only special people like Governor Ige got to take a photo with the national champ. So obviously there were some weird circumstances this year because of COVID. But what is your assessment, I guess, of the response by the state and by the community to the team? And was there anything that kind of blew your mind by it, or was it what you expected, kind of?
I thought for what the team was, or for what the school and for what the state was able to do on such short notice, to have the drive-through celebration on campus the day of the team arriving within a couple of hours, I thought that was great. You knew traffic was going to be nuts around Manoa coming through, coming on Dole Street, going down Lower Campus Road. I thought the fan base that was able to come out on basically such short notice to come and celebrate the guys, I thought that was great. And for the presentation on Wednesday, a couple of days later on Wednesday, when they were able to have the trolley ride going to the governor's house, or going to the governor's house, and doing all of those types of events, I thought that was great. I think for what you were given, and for where we are in terms of the COVID response and everything, I think you have been able to do as much as you can do. I mean, would you have liked to have seen maybe a watch party at the arena for the national championship match? I thought that would have been cool. Or maybe like you put a TV screen in maybe Cook Field or TC Ching, and socially distanced. You could have found ways maybe to also include a lot more of the fan base, the season ticket holders. But I think, to answer that question, I think for as little time as you had to prepare things and to help celebrate everybody that they were here before they ended up going back home for the summer, and for the seniors who graduated who have left, you've been able to do as much as you can do given with the time that you were presented with.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially with the drive-by. That was impressive how many cars came by, how patient the boys were, how excited they were as well to see everyone. But it just shows you, still, we have it in Hawaii. It's like, if you're going to captivate us with something, people will be there for it. And going back to Colt and the Sugar Bowl team, and how events could attract people for hours and they'll wait. And I heard people were, do you know what the final number was? Was it like 500 something or something? How many cars?
I think for that drive-through on Sunday, it was around 1,000.
What?
And for a lot,
wow.
and it was about 1,000 cars, and for a lot of them, it was their first time being able to see the team in person.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have fans in the arena for the home matches, and for the select few they got to go and see them in person in Columbus. That was the first time you got to see them, and it was just a chance. I know a lot of people were stuck in traffic, but for what we heard from a lot of those people, that it was well worth it, because they were able to go through the celebration and just give thanks to a program that gave back to this state in a time where we've been socially distant. We've not been able to see people for, months and months. And finally, we have a big reason to celebrate, and that is a national championship.
And that was cool because, we came out, we responded. I do feel excited. I did get one of the streamers that popped out, and I just think about that moment and how cool it was as a fan to be in there, and for all of us that were there at the Covelli Center. But looking back at Ohio and that whole, the gym and what was your takeaway also just from that atmosphere and the way that the tournament was run? And I mean, maybe at how maybe the same thing could be done there. You know what I mean?
I thought the facility was beautiful. We
Yeah.
saw renderings and pictures of it when it first opened up in June of 2019, and thought it was great. I mean,
Hmm.
for the Ohio State University to have 49-50 million dollars just laying
Yeah.
around to build a volleyball specific
Yeah.
facility, and yes, wrestling uses it as well.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
I thought for what they did, they could have done a lot more to help the fan experience for those
Definitely.
that were there. And
Yeah.
there were a few things that could have been done. uh we talked about grow the game and the hashtag. I think if you end up going back to Ohio State for an NCAA tournament, to have a facility that only holds 3,700,
Mm.
I think that is, I know
Yeah.
their minimum is 35. We all knew what happened at the pyramid at Long Beach State 2 years ago with 4,200 is the capacity, and Hawaii fans not being given a whole lot of opportunities to get tickets because
No,
Long
not
Beach
at all.
State. I think to go from 4,200 down to 3,700 for capacity, I know because of COVID it didn't go into that much of an account, but I think moving forward, you need facilities that can hold five, six, seven
Yeah.
thousand.
Yeah.
And it's been years. 2004 is the last time Hawaii was able to host the national championship. They put in bids, they have not been given those bids. I think to help continue to grow the game, I'm hoping in the next cycle when those bids go out for the national championships that Hawaii puts in one, and they're able to be given a bid to host the NC2A tournament.
So I just had a crazy flashback. The first time I think I ever saw digital television. This is strange. The switch from like the box sizes was, and it might have been fake digital, forced digital, how they used to do it on purpose, but still was the national championship when I think OC16 or Spectrum still showed it, even though Hawaii was hosting it, right? Wasn't that 2000, 2001, 2000? There was that year where we thought we'd make it. I think it was Clay Stanley was on the team. And we still showed up, and Princeton, I think, was in it. Um, I don't know who was represented. Obviously, there's only 4 teams. That was a different tournament. But, I mean, you can imagine if it was Penn State, Ohio State, UH, BYU, Long Beach State, and whatever North Carolina school gets in. Like that would be a huge ticket in Hawaii, right? We would sell out the Stan Share Center.
We would, and I know when UCLA was able to host in Pauley in 2018, and
Mm.
their team was able to make the national championship, and it was them in Long Beach State, and for Pauley, who holds I think about 17, 18,000,
Yeah.
they drew 85, maybe 9,000, 8,500, maybe 9,000. So even they weren't able to
Wow.
sell out or even get to
Yeah.
half of the capacity for Fall Pavilion. But if if Hawaii is in the national tournament, and then if they're hosting it
Yeah.
and we're able to get fans back, which we hopefully can have that
Yeah. Of
happen
course.
coming very very soon. If Hawaii is involved and they're hosting,
Yeah.
uh, you better get your ticket quick because
Yeah.
it gonna be sold out.
For sure. We got another question from Grant. He wants to know you get your background. Is that a lava or something? He's like, where did you get that sheet? I'm guessing he's talking about your background.
Yes, my mother, who
Uh huh.
from her years of reporting, Sydney Lewis, found this at a local, well, not even local. She found it at Costco. She gave it to me about a year ago, and I don't wear pareos, but it's been a great backdrop for those that have watched My Fan Friday top
Yeah.
story
Talk about
segments on
that.
ESPN
Yeah.
Honolulu. That's been the backdrop. So just we recorded one today, we left it up, and that we found it at Costco.
So who is your yeah, and talk about just that what your work has been recently too with Fan Fridays.
So that it was an idea come up between our web editor Lance Tominaga, but also our
Mm-hmm.
general manager Matt Apana, former Rainbow Warrior baseball player,
Mm-hmm.
and it was an idea thought of last August, as we knew that it was going to be a while before sports were going to come back, and this was before football announced that they were going to be playing Mountain West only schedule for the
Mm-hmm.
2020 season, and so they're thinking, how do we keep fans engaged? How do
Of
we
course.
continue to have stories put out there with athletes and coaches? And so we came up with our Fan Friday Talk Story, and it's going with players and coaches, former players,
Mm-hmm.
different sports. Try to hit for the majority part to hit different and every sport at UH. And we just finished one today with former Rainbow Warrior football player Mike Lafaele, Kalihi boy, Farrington High grad,
Awesome.
of course played here at UH. But just a chance to get to know the player, the athlete, the coach from more than just what we see on TV, from more
Mm-hmm.
than what you read in their background, in their
Yeah.
bio on the website. So it's just a chance to get to know them, have them open up a little bit, and just as the title says, talk story.
Yeah. And it's fun. Definitely check that out. And you can ask questions there too. You can comment. But we got shout out Sheldon Nagata as well at ESPN, one of my favorite guys, and he's always on. Matt, I love that guy too. I mean, these are just great guys at ESPN 1420 and passionate about sports, passionate about the fan experience, and that's what's ultimately important. But now that we look back on this season and the lessons learned and through the pandemic as well, I think ultimately, what will be kind of how will we contextualize this national championship at UH within the realm of maybe state history, maybe UH history? I mean, where do we put it?
It's up there. I won't say as what Jim Leahy said years ago that beating BYU was better than statehood. I think we'll keep men's volleyball and football a little bit separate, just with the years of that
Mm-hmm.
rivalry between Hawaii and BYU in football. But when you look at UH as a whole, the last NCAA title was in '87 with women's volleyball. The
Mm-hmm.
last team national championship was in 2004 with co-ed sailing. It's been a long time coming, and for as head coach Charlie Wade has said, it's been a process. And they made the tournament in 2015, lost in the playing game, made it to the semifinal round in 2017, made the final in 19, had the pandemic cut the season short in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and they were able to finish the business in 21 and hang a national championship. And I just think for the experience of what we've had and what we've seen in sports the last 12, 13, 14 months, and for a brief time, there were no sports. And now the norm has been, for the most part, of remote broadcasts, and you're
Yeah.
not able to be there. So to have the ability to be on site and to call the two matches in the Final Four, and provide that live
Mm-hmm.
commentary for everybody listening, not just in in the country, not just around the state, but around the world, because we
Definitely.
all know that Hawaii has a very diverse and large fan base from whatever uh, for whatever sport it is. But for volleyball, as you said, that's been the sport. That's what you drive around, you see all the beach nets, you see kids playing in the parks. It's very special that the adopted sport, and yes, some will say surfing is the sport of Hawaii, but it's a sport that is very passionate, that Hawaii fans love their volleyball. To have them win the title in 21, it's quite special.
I totally agree, and I love that point too about Hawaii and how important the sport of volleyball is, and how culturally this sport has been important in religions in schools. So it's really permeated, and I love that. You're right. It's nice to be the winner of it all as well. But Tiff Wells joining us tonight. It's been a great, just a time going down memory lane with you. I was so excited seeing you in Ohio and hearing your call, and being able to celebrate the proper way with an exciting call But mahalo for joining us, and everybody out there, check us out. Keep on the web, on this podcast. You can listen to the show as well, the Hawaii Sports Fans channel, on Spotify, iHeart, Apple Podcasts, wherever. So, this is a great show, and I hope everybody goes back to memory lane with us, because this doesn't happen very often, a national championship. But mahalo, Tiff Wells, for joining us.
Anytime, Wayne. Thank you for what you do. Always a pleasure.
Mahalo. We'll see you all next week. Take care, everybody. Aloha.
Bye, guys.